From the very first moment I drew breath in the deep, loamy soil of our vast forest home, I understood my purpose. I was a worker, a gatherer, a tiny, unremarkable cog in the magnificent, humming machine of my colony. My family praised my diligence. My strength, though small, was relentless. Each day I would march through towering blades of grass that stood like ancient green skyscrapers under a sky perpetually dappled with shifting patterns of light and shadow. I felt a certain pride in the predictable rhythm of our existence, safe within the intricate, winding tunnels of our underground city. It was a life of order, a life of purpose, and for a long time that was enough. The familiar scent of damp earth and the constant, gentle hum of my sisters were the only comforts I thought I would ever need. I believed my world was complete. But that feeling of contentment was not destined to last. A change began, subtle at first, like a single dark cloud marring a perfectly blue sky. It started with the peacock. I was hauling a grain of rice, a burden twice my size, my muscles straining with the effort, when I heard his raucous, piercing cry echo through the clearing. I turned, and there he was, a breathtaking explosion of iridescent blue and emerald green, his tail a magnificent fan of 1,000 shimmering, jeweled eyes. The entire forest seemed to pause, every creature captivated by his performance. A bitter thought, sharp and cold as ice, pierced my heart. They never look at me like that. I was just background noise, a speck in the dirt. The envy festered inside me, growing thorns that caught on every passing thought. Next, it was the butterfly that poisoned my peace. She was a living piece of stained glass window, tossed gently on a breeze I could not even feel. She danced from flower to flower, her freedom absolute, her world seemingly limitless, a dizzying tapestry of color and light. I watched her, my own feet forever anchored to the gritty, unforgiving earth, and a deep, aching longing filled me. Why was I cursed to only crawl? To never know the thrilling lurch of flight, to never see the canopy from that impossible, glorious height. My own strong legs suddenly felt like prison chains. Even the squirrel, a creature I had seen 1,000 times, became an object of my painful fixation. I'd see her, a flash of russet fur, leaping through the canopy with a fearless, gravity-defying grace. From one precarious branch to another she'd fly, chattering without a care in the world. I, meanwhile, trudged below, navigating a treacherous landscape of pebbles that were like boulders and cracks that were like canyons. My world was so small, so frustratingly horizontal. Hers was a vast three-dimensional playground. The comparison was a poison, and I drank it deeply, daily, until it soured my very spirit. The weight of this new bitterness became a burden heavier than any seed I could ever carry. My work, once my pride, now felt meaningless. A monotonous sentence served in the shadows. I began to lag behind my sisters during our foraging marches. My movements grew sluggish, my focus shattered by every flutter of a wing or flash of color above. I'd hide under the curled husk of a fallen leaf, not to rest, but to simply stare into the dim green light, listening to the joyful, carefree sounds of others living the lives I so desperately wanted. The colony's harmonious hum began to sound like a taunt. My family noticed the shadow that had fallen over me, of course. My mother would gently tap my antenna with hers, a silent, worried question in her touch. "Little one," my sister would ask, her voice full of concern, "why do you carry such a heavy cloud on your shoulders? Your light is dimming." Their kindness was a mirror, and I couldn't bear to look into it. I would just offer a weak, brittle smile and shuffle away, retreating further into the lonely prison of my own making. I was isolating myself, brick by bitter brick, becoming a ghost in my own life. The very air began to change one afternoon, a shift I was too wrapped in my self-pity to truly heed. The humidity climbed, growing thick, heavy, and unnervingly still. The birdsong, usually a constant, cheerful chorus, faltered and then died completely. A deep, ominous rumble echoed from somewhere far, far away, a low growl from the very belly of the world itself. A strange electric tension crackled through the atmosphere, making my antenna twitch with a primal alarm I couldn't ignore. The light took on a sickly yellow-green hue, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and twist like living things. The first gust of wind was not a breeze. It was a violent, shocking shove. A monstrous breath that tore leaves from branches with a sound like ripping fabric and sent pebbles skittering like frightened insects. The world exploded into a chaos I could never have imagined. The distant rumble became an earth-shaking roar, advancing with terrifying speed. The trees, the pillars of my entire universe, began to whip back and forth like frantic, panicked dancers, their branches snapping with sharp, explosive cracks that tore through the air. This was not a summer storm. This was something ancient and angry. Rain didn't fall, it was unleashed. A solid, punishing wall of water that instantly turned the peaceful forest floor into a cold, roaring, churning flood. The droplet that had once been a transparent planet was now a hammer blow. Panic, pure and instinctual, finally ripped me from my melancholy. I scrambled, slipping in the liquid mud, fighting against a torrential current that sought to sweep me away into oblivion. My small size, once the source of my greatest shame, was now my most desperate liability. I was a speck in a hurricane, utterly insignificant against this raw power. Through the blinding, stinging sheets of rain, I saw a devastating flash of brilliant color. It was the peacock, drenched and stumbling, his magnificent tail dragging behind him in the mud like a sodden, worthless rug. He was struggling, his beauty a crippling burden. And in that single, horrifying moment, the world I had built of envy and want completely shattered. This was not about beauty or freedom anymore. This was not about gifts I did not have. This was about survival. A new, terrifying understanding dawned on me as the wind howled its fury. We were all equal now in the face of the storm. The sight of the peacock's struggle jolted me into action. My self-pity was a luxury I could no longer afford. I fought my way through the liquid chaos, every instinct screaming at me to find the entrance to our underground sanctuary. My heart hammered against my tiny shell, not with jealousy now, but with a raw, primal fear I had never known. The familiar landmarks, the distinctive route, the smooth stone were gone, washed away in the deluge. I was lost in a world being unmade, drowning in a cold, roaring darkness. My only thought was of home, of the deep, safe earth. Another deafening crack split the air, a sound so immense it felt like the sky was breaking apart. I watched in utter horror as the mighty oak, the very tree the squirrel called home, groaned deeply. It tilted at an impossible, sickening angle, its roots tearing free from the sodden ground with a terrible sucking sound. It began its slow, inevitable descent to the ravaged earth below. There was no graceful leap that could save her now. No agility was a match for this destruction. A profound sense of dread washed over me, colder than the rain. Somehow, by sheer luck or a desperate homing instinct, my scrambling legs found it, the hidden entrance to our nest, nearly obscured by a slurry of mud and debris. I tumbled inside, falling down into the welcoming, familiar darkness. The cacophony of the apocalypse above became a muffled, terrifying roar. All around me, my colony was huddled together, a trembling mass of antennae and shared fear. But we were safe. Our tunnels, engineered with perfect precision over generations, held firm against the fury. The deep, solid earth, the very thing I had taken for granted, was our shield. In that moment of stark safety, the truth struck me with the force of a physical blow. My home was the only reason I was still alive. I thought of the butterfly and my heart clenched. Her delicate, powdered wings would be instantly waterlogged, transformed from instruments of flight into anchors, dragging her down into the drowning world. I thought of the squirrel, her home destroyed, her lightning speed useless against the relentless, pounding rain. I thought of the peacock, his vanity soaked into the mud, and a profound, burning shame washed over me, hotter than any envy. I had wasted so much time coveting their gifts, blind to my own incredible fortune. I had been a fool, a selfish fool, while they were facing annihilation. The guilt was an unbearable weight. But from that guilt, a new feeling surged through me, fierce and powerful, burning away the last remnants of my self-pity. It was a clarity of purpose I had never felt, even in my most diligent days. We have to help them, the thought screamed in my head. It wasn't a question or a suggestion. It was an absolute order from my very soul. I turned to the mass of anxious ants around me, my voice finding a strength and resonance I didn't know I possessed. "We are safe," I communicated, my signals clear and urgent. "But they are not. Our strength is not for us alone. We must march." I expected hesitation, confusion, but I was met with a unified, instantaneous resolve. The colony mobilized with a breathtaking efficiency that brought a strange moisture to my eyes. This was our true strength, our real beauty. Not in individual glory, but in unified action. We were one mind, one purpose. As one, we formed living chains, a river of determination flowing back up into the maelstrom. We marched into the punishing rain, a tiny, disciplined army against impossible odds. The wind howled, trying to pluck us from the earth, but we locked legs, creating an unbreakable chain. We had a mission. We pushed through the flooding, our combined strength creating pathways where none existed, a tiny beacon of order in the overwhelming chaos. We were a force of nature, now fighting against nature itself, driven by a duty greater than survival. We found the butterfly first, a heartbreaking sight. She was clinging to the shredded remains of a leaf, her vibrant wings battered and heavy with water, her spirit utterly broken. She looked at us, hundreds of us swarming around her, not with fear, but with a dazed, hopeless confusion. "Be still," we communicated through a symphony of gentle touches. "We are here." Dozens of my sisters carefully slid beneath her fragile body, forming a living, breathing stretcher of incredible stability. We lifted her, carrying her collective weight together, moving with painstaking slowness back towards the dry safety of our tunnels. Next, we heard the faint, terrified chattering from the roots of the fallen oak. The squirrel was huddled there, a soaked, shivering ball of fur, her eyes wide with terror. Her legendary speed was meaningless here in the wreckage. We surrounded her, not as a threat, but as a blanket of empathy and action. Some of us scrambled to gather dry leaves from protected nooks, while others began using our bodies and quick hardening mud to build a small protective wall around her, a fortress against the relentless wind and rain. We worked in perfect, silent harmony. Then we saw the peacock. The proud bird was a pitiful sight, hunched and defeated, his glorious feathers matted into a single filthy sheet, his magnificent head drooping into the mud. He could not even lift his crown. He saw our approach, and I saw a flash of deep shame in his eyes. He who was so admired now brought so low. Without a word, we got to work. Hundreds of us swarmed over him, not as pests, but as saviors. We used our tiny mandibles to meticulously clean the water and mud from each individual feather, working with a precision no other creature could manage. It was a painstaking restoration of dignity, and as we worked, the storm's fury finally began to ebb, its rage spent, leaving a battered but peaceful world in its wake.